Thinking that canned tuna is a safe, cheap, and somewhat healthy option is normal. I thought the same until a few small things added up. With time, those small things became huge red flags. Based on that, I made a countdown of 5 categories of canned tuna buys I won't be making again. Bumblebee is one of the biggest canned tuna brands in the United States, but that doesn't automatically make it the safest choice. The real problem is the trust factor. Bumblebee became a major name in the Department of Justice's tuna price-fixing case, a scandal that exposed how certain companies colluded to raise prices in ways that hurt consumers and violated federal law. Their executives faced criminal charges, and the company itself pleaded guilty. Let's be clear, this doesn't mean every can of Bumblebee is dangerous or toxic, but it does reveal a pattern of weak governance. And when a company has already been caught manipulating the market, it's fair to question whether they're equally lax in other areas, like transparency, recall communication, or internal oversight. On top of that, Bumblebee has received waves of consumer complaints online about texture inconsistencies, odd smells, and cans packed with more liquid than tuna. Some customers report opening cans that look watery or mushy, nothing like the firm flakes they expected. You can eat Bumblebee occasionally, but I'd never make it my weekly default. A brand with a legal history that messy needs to go above and beyond in transparency, testing, and communication. Until I see that consistency, it stays on my avoid for regular use list. StarKist is another massively popular brand, probably the one you grew up seeing in your parents' pantry. But popularity doesn't guarantee reliability. StarKist was also involved in the same price-fixing scandal that hit Bumblebee, resulting in one of the largest fines in canned seafood history. Again, the issue here isn't the tuna is poisoned. It's that the company was shown to be willing to cut corners behind the scenes. And when a corporation gets caught cheating financially, it raises questions about what else they might minimize, overlook, or quietly ignore. Consumer feedback supports this idea. A surprising number of customers report opening StarKist cans that smell metallic or sour, or that contain darker, stringier cuts of tuna instead of the clean flakes shown in advertisements. Some say that StarKist's light tuna tastes wildly different from can to can, which suggests inconsistent sourcing or processing. People eat tuna expecting uniformity. That's the whole point of canned food. When a brand can't deliver that consistency, it's a sign that something somewhere in the supply chain isn't being managed well. StarKist is cheap and easy to find, but until they become more transparent with testing, sourcing, and quality control, I don't consider it a brand worth depending on. Chicken of the Sea is a classic American brand that's been around for generations, but this brand has faced several recalls in connection with sealing issues. That's exactly the kind of problem that matters most with canned foods. A can is safe only if its seal is perfect. If the seam is weak, if the lid wasn't applied properly, or if the pull tab was manufactured incorrectly, air or bacteria can get inside. That creates the ideal environment for spoilage. And in the absolute worst case scenario, it can open the door for serious bacteria, like Clostridium botulinum. Chicken of the Sea has had voluntary recalls tied to exactly these types of sealing defects. While no widespread illnesses were reported, the recalls forced thousands of shoppers to check the codes on the cans they already had at home. Beyond recalls, long-running customer reviews frequently mention off smells, discoloration, or tuna that seemed unusually mushy. All of this sends signs that something along the supply chain isn't being controlled properly. Maybe the fish wasn't handled at the right temperature. Maybe certain batches were processed faster than they should have been. Whatever the cause, quality inconsistency is a warning sign. Chicken of the Sea is not the absolute worst brand on the market, but it's not what I'd choose if I were eating tuna more than once a week. Genova is actually marketed as a more premium tuna. Imagine that. Usually packed in fancy olive oil, positioned as an upgrade from the big three budget brands. But in early 2025, a serious recall swept through multiple retailer labels connected to the same co-packer: Genova, Van Camp's, Trader Joe's, and H-E-B. The issue? A defective easy-open pull tab that could compromise the can seal. While no illnesses were reported, the recall emphasized the one thing most shoppers forget. You might say Genova or Trader Joe's, but the factory behind them might be the same. When a single defect at a co-packing facility spreads across 4 or 5 beloved brands, it exposes how fragile the system really is. If one plant has an issue, the ripple effect is massive. Genova itself suffered reputational damage because consumers couldn't easily tell whether their exact cans were part of the recall. The lot codes were small, inconsistently placed, and difficult for some shoppers to match. Premium or not, a recall of that size tells me one thing: don't rely on a brand that doesn't show clear traceability on the label. Before number 1, a quick reminder to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. Out of all the canned tuna on shelves, the one category I avoid the most is the nameless bargain brand value tuna. Something like Walmart's Great Value, Dollar General's Clover Valley, or any other dollar and discount store labels. These aren't bad because they're cheap. There are a lot of issues with the product, but the most notable ones are no species clarity, no harvest region, no co-packer information, and no quality testing posted anywhere. Literally everything that matters and that you need to know, you can't know. So you can't know which type of tuna you're buying, from where, from who, or even if it's passing the quality tests. When you combine all that uncertainty with the fact that canned tuna is something people sometimes eat several times a week, the risk just isn't worth it. These cans may be safe most of the time, but the lack of transparency alone makes them the last option I'd ever choose. Finally, the part everyone wants to know: which tuna brands can you trust? After looking at sourcing, transparency, recalls, consumer complaints, testing practices, and long-term stability, 2 brands consistently stand out. They're not the cheapest, because safety, testing, and responsible fishing cost money, but they're the ones that remove 90% of the uncertainty. Safe Catch built its entire identity around one promise: mercury testing at a level other brands don't come close to. While most tuna companies test in batches, or in some cases not publicly at all, Safe Catch's premium lines test every single fish. They use strict mercury limits, rejecting anything that doesn't fall within those levels. That means the tuna you're eating is almost always lower mercury than the industry average. The brand also posts sourcing information, uses responsible fishing methods, and shows traceability. They're transparent about where their tuna comes from and how it's tested, which is exactly what you want from a product that you may eat often. For pregnant women, nursing parents, or anyone who eats tuna multiple times a week, Safe Catch is one of the most reliable choices. Wild Planet takes the opposite approach from Safe Catch. Instead of testing every fish, they focus on catching smaller fish from healthier fisheries, which naturally reduces mercury risk. Their labels are extremely clear: species, catch method, region, and sustainability practices. They're one of the few brands that intentionally use smaller, younger tuna that haven't had time to accumulate heavy metals. Wild Planet also uses a single cook process that preserves texture and nutrients, so you end up with firmer, less watery tuna. It's consistent, traceable, and tastes far better than most budget brands. If you want a safe, predictable tuna that doesn't hide anything, Wild Planet is the brand I reach for the most. The bottom line is that most canned tuna is safe, but But if you eat it regularly, the brand you choose matters more than you'd think. Avoid the 5 brands above for frequent eating and stick to the 2 that give you clarity, testing, and accountability.